Positive heads on this week's Soul Share episode. I'm very excited to have Dr. Dain here with me on the show. Dain is an author and leading facilitator of Access Consciousness, a personal development modality practiced in 173 countries. Super excited to have you here. Hello, Dain. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Brandon, thanks for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure.
Indeed. Likewise. Well, I'm gonna kick this off with my cliche opening question, which is this. You're in an elevator. The woman next to you looks over, says, "What's your passion?" You have 10 floors to answer. What do you say?
10 floors. That's a long time.
You get to decide if this is like a super high tech, speedy elevator or it's a 1930s model. That's your choice.
Cool. I get to decide whether I'm in an elevator in an old building in France or a modern building in New York.
Yeah. And if it's in France, so I do need your answer to be in French. So
then we'll do New York. So it'll have to be quick. My passion is to show people that the life of their dreams is truly possible to create. And it's not only not cheesy and it's not impossible, it's fully possible. And if we're living anything less, then we have different choices we can make.
I love that. You know, what comes to mind with what you just said is a quote, and I don't remember where I saw it, who said it, but I really love it. A man must be what he can be. And this idea that, at your fullest potential, there is something there that exists. And if you're not realizing what that is, there's a hole, there's something missing, something felt. And that's kind of what comes up for me when I hear you say that.
Well, and also that then there's something else available and that we can choose. And I think that's the part that most of us grew up not ever being acknowledged for, is that we have choice in what occurs. We live in a world where a lot of people think that life is happening to them and they don't have choice. And that's one of the things I would like to change personally.
Yeah, that's definitely a mission of this show, is to help people, to empower people to realize that very thing. So let's if you would, take a moment to sort of set the stage for a conversation and share whatever feels relevant to share regarding your backstory, how you got here doing what you do.
Well, let's see. Back 20 some years ago, I became a chiropractor. And the reason for that was I saw chiropractors who seemed to be creating what I would have called miracles at the time. They were helping people change everything from depression to body image issues to physical things. And I went, that's what I want to do. So I became a chiropractor, went to school, did my thing, and I got out and I was not creating those results at all. And the only thing I could think of was, I'm wrong. Well, after being unhappy for the better part of 3 years, while simultaneously reading every book I could on personal development, psychology, transformational modalities, and going to every workshop I could, what would happen is I'd go to the workshop and I'd feel great by the time we left on Sunday evening. And by Wednesday morning, it felt like every single problem was back, but multiplied. And like the universe caved back in on my head. And it was literally on a Wednesday after a workshop where I thought, yay, I finally found the answer. And the answer I was looking for was to be happy. And I wanted some more ease financially too. And I went, universe, and this was 24 years ago now. I said, universe, you have 6 months. Either my life truly changes or I'm out of here. And I set a date to end my life. I was so tired of the heaviness that life was seemingly delivering to me over and over, even though I was doing all the things, I would work the stuff that I had, except it didn't seem to work in the trenches of life. And a week after making this demand, I saw an ad for something called Access Consciousness. And I called the girl and I said, hey, what are you doing? She sounded just like a happy marshmallow. I was depressed and I was a bit angry, and because here I am calling somebody, it said, access, all of life comes to me with ease and joy and glory. Call Shannon. And my life was pain, suffering, and gory at the time. And so I was just pissed at the person who put this ad in the paper, as you might imagine. And she was just so kind. And we ended up setting up a session. And I had this session that lasted an hour and 15 minutes. I went into it depressed and suicidal, ready to get the flock out of here. And I came out of it with a gratitude for being alive, knowing that somehow fundamentally everything had changed. And I
Mm.
couldn't have explained it. The only thing I
Hmm.
remember is looking out at the clouds in the sky in Santa Barbara that I had learned to hate by
Mm.
that point in my life, and thinking, has it always been this beautiful here? And I just didn't notice.
Wow.
And it created such a transformation. There was such a fundamental transformation that I went, wow, I want to be here. If it feels like this to be alive, I'm in.
Yeah.
And so what would happen is I would give her chiropractic. She would do access consciousness sessions with me. And whereas I went into the first session like a contracted little ball of unhappiness and judgment of myself and my life and my creations, I got a sense of space after that first session. And with each subsequent session, it felt like it increased. And
Mm-hmm.
so a month later, I was a completely different person. And the
Wow.
thing that she did was she gave me a tool to use each week.
Mm-hmm.
And this was really where part of the difference for me started, in the recognition that there was something different possible. Because the tool that she would give me, when the universe wanted to cave in on my head again, like it had with everything else I had ever done, I would use the tool and I would get that space again.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, it's not that I'm wrong and stupid and bad and can't do this. I just haven't had the tools to apply in the situations where I need them to change the situations. And so here I am 24 years later. After a short amount of time, I met the founder of Access, who happened to be her father, and we became fast friends upon meeting each other and started exploring, what is consciousness actually? And recognizing that consciousness is where everything exists and nothing is judged. Where there is
Mm-hmm.
no right, there is no wrong, there's simply choice that will create an effect. And we
Mm-hmm.
started exploring, how do we help people change the difficult areas of their lives, but also beyond that, because that's a noble pursuit, but it's not enough. How do we give people the tools they need to actually create the lives of their dreams by
Yeah.
using the consciousness that is already within them and literally giving them access to it?
Wow. That's and you just found this in like a, uh newspaper or something at the
Yeah.
time, like
Yeah, there's this
wow.
little independent paper in Santa Barbara called The Independent, and it was
Mm-hmm.
probably 100 pages and it folded in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And I was leafing through, and all I saw, the only thing my eyes focused on, were this little classified ad that said, Access, all of life comes to me with ease and joy and glory. Call Shannon.
Wow. What
Yeah,
a
thanks,
trip.
universe. Appreciate
Yeah. Yeah.
it.
Well, I'm glad that you found it, and 6 months later you didn't check out. I mean,
Me too.
did you feel pretty like resolved in that? Like, because suicide is like, it takes some guts. It's not for, I think there's probably a lot of people that, were they a little more willing to, a little braver, if you will, they would have off themselves, and so did you feel in that moment where you made that decision, like, I'm serious about this, I
I
really,
was, pardon the pun, I was dead
mm,
serious, you
right,
know.
right.
And for me to get to that point, see, I'm somebody who loved being alive.
Mm-hmm.
And as I became an adult, trying to create my life and trying to start my practice and trying to make my relationship work, and just, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to, trying to be the perfect person for everyone. Um, the burdens of that were so heavy. And I say again, the thing that really got me to that point was that place where here I was 30 years old, and I was doing everything that I could find. In other
Yeah.
words, I was working it. I wouldn't just, read a book and go, oh, that's nice. I would read a book and use the tools. I'd
Yeah.
go to the workshop and I would use the tools. I would do the stuff, I was doing the
Yeah.
work.
Right.
And that point, at that morning where I made this demand, was the first time in my life where I'd truly given up hope.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I experienced a lot of abuse when I was younger,
Oh,
a lot
really?
of physical abuse, sexual abuse,
Wow.
emotional abuse.
Wow.
And, growing up around people who literally hated my presence there. And even
Wow.
then, I was like, as a little kid, I was like, it doesn't have to be this way. I knew
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And so I still had this sense of hope that things would change. And I finally, it was that day where I literally finally gave up hope. And it's so interesting that, I'm sure, if we hindsight is such a wonderful 2020 aspect, but it's like maybe I had to get there to be here. Who
Yeah.
knows?
Right. Right. Exactly. It's that contrast. And now you're able to actually help others through the same path that you've walked, right? And someone who hasn't walked that path can't speak about it as authentically as someone who's actually been there, right? And I think that's a lot of
Truly.
times what's happening with, you know, these incredible souls that go through intense challenges like it sounds like you have. um so sort of how do you approach it now where obviously you're um helping other people who have walked this path, like the person listening who is where you were then, what do you say to them?
Well, the first thing is, what if you're not wrong?
Mm-hmm.
And see, the thing that I have found is one of the tools we have in Access, and we have a lot of tools which I find are very helpful as we navigate our lives to be able to call on something to change what's up in the moment or to bring awareness to it. Because the only time we really stick ourselves is when we're functioning from a lie. And what's true always makes you lighter. A lie always makes you heavier. And
Mm-hmm.
so and a lot of the people that I work with have experienced forms of abuse that they don't recognize or that seem from their point of view like less abuse than others. There's the whole gamut, but the fundamental idea is, what if you're not wrong?
Mm.
And what if what occurred for you was not about you, was not about making you wrong? Because we've done several classes actually on clearing the issues of abuse. And one of the things that we recognized is one of the conversations that I have with people who've experienced abuse is, look, if you've experienced this and you're still putting one foot in front of the other, if you're not perpetrating the cycle, but you've ended the cycle, you have a lot of power that you haven't acknowledged. And in fact, in diving deep with people who've experienced this that are willing to go there, and
Mm.
it's an interestingly intense topic that we're starting off on here. There's so many lighter topics, but I think it's really helpful for people to be able to have some perspective on this. And one of the things that we found is, for so many of the people that have been abused, it wasn't actually personal. It was because they were the most powerful person around, and
Mm.
somebody who does abuse feels like they have no power. So if they can get power over that person, then it
Mm.
gives them a sense that they somehow have power. So if we can partially at least take it out of the idea that it's about you being wrong and that's why you experienced it,
All
what
right.
is actually underneath it that nobody else is looking at or talking about? And also, what strength do you have for having survived it? And
Mm.
what further strength do you have for desiring to create a different outcome with your life? So
Yeah.
how much power do you really have?
Yes. Right. I really like that idea of, like, you went through this super challenging thing, and as a result, an unexpected byproduct, there's power at your disposal that it is helped to propagate, like this idea of something. I always say smooth seas never made for a skilled sailor, and you came to be a skilled sailor. And if you were on really choppy seas, you've got some real you know power there waiting under the surface. The other thing that kind of comes to mind is, you know um, when we start labeling things, you know it really, you got to be really careful, I think, with this. I was traumatized, I was abused, I was, the story around it carries so much power. And
Yes.
imagine, like, if I punch you in the face and then you then take a story around that. Brandon and I was there, and we were supposed to have this great moment together, and he lost his temper, and he punched me in the face and abused me, and ridiculed me, and all this energy around it that you could then go carry forever, and retell and relive, and wade in the pool of that energy. Or there was a fist. It struck my face. It stung. It's just the universe was moving in some way,
Yeah.
and if you can really keep in the forefront of your mind this idea, it's all energy sort of balancing itself in some way beyond what you can fully comprehend, and there is this impersonal aspect to it of, like, one time the universe exploded, and it's still exploding outwards, and here we are 13 billion years later, and now this fist struck this chin, like, well, as opposed to all the story and energy that goes with that story around it that disempowers us. I think that's a really interesting thing to sort of take some of the sting away.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because people are often validated for their story by others who have a desire to validate, or a trauma of a sort of their own. And
Yeah.
one of the things that we do with the Access Consciousness tools is get people to that perspective that you're talking about, which is where everything is an interesting point of view, which we call allowance, which rather than the alignment and agreement, which is the positive polarity, like, where somebody goes, "You're a jerk," and you go, "Oh my God, I'm a jerk," which is the positive polarity. You've just made it real. And then what happens is we do the negative polarity to try to overcome it, which is, "I'm not a jerk, you're a jerk." Whereas if somebody goes, "You're a jerk," you're like, "Okay," which is allowance, which it gives us the freedom to go beyond using the story to re-traumatize ourselves, and to need to seek validation from others. And it also, and the other beautiful thing about that is it allows us to go beyond the victim mentality to a creator mentality, which is an interesting thing, because there's such a draw when someone has experienced something that's very intense, very painful from their perspective. But like you said, that's part of the story. And there's such a draw for us to continuously, like, repeat the pain, if you will. And if we can break that cycle, there's a level of freedom that exists, because quantum physics will tell us that if you're vibrating like something, you're going to attract it into your life.
Yeah.
So if you're vibrating from, "I was abused and I need to try to avoid abuse," you're going to find all kinds of situations that occur that seem abusive that you need to try to avoid. Well, that's because your point of view creates your reality. Reality doesn't create your point of view. So part of the freedom that truly functioning from a conscious point of view allows us is to get over our fixed point of view. So we don't have to bring that into our lives anymore. Now it starts to become a matter of, what would I like my life to be? What would I like to choose? What choices do I have that I've never acknowledged?
I love what you just said. I'm writing it down here, that your your point of view creates your reality. Your reality doesn't create your point of view. And wow, I mean, that's really realizing that is, it's so empowering, so empowering. And also approaching these sorts of things with you said acceptance, like curiosity, like, oh wow, I'm you think I'm a jerk, interesting, I wonder, how can I reflect, like, you know what can I get from that, hearing that? How can I, like, use that as some sort of a reflection, as opposed to needing that validation or needing to prove. I know that's a big part of my own journey, has been not needing to be right, and just overcoming that need to argue you into submission, and so
Yeah.
I think that has been a big one for me personally. So,
You and me both, my friend.
yeah,
And
yeah.
And there's another element of that needing to be right, where we need to be right that we're wrong. Whatever point of view we take about us, we tend to try to then be right about that point of view. And
Right.
and it's interesting to see how many people want to be right about their wrong, whether they bought that point of view when they were younger, whatever their life experience has been. And it's interesting to present the possibility to people that, what if you're not wrong? And what if you don't have to try to prove you're right? Because people always try to prove the opposite of what they believe they are or what they've decided they are.
Mm.
And so the only time we try to prove we're right is if we fundamentally have some sense of wrongness for something somewhere. We're trying to prove the opposite of that. But what if we could turn the whole thing on its ear? What if we could just show up and go, hi, here I
Yeah.
am, warts and all. I've got some great stuff. I've got some screwed up stuff. I've got all kinds of stuff I've changed and all kinds of stuff I'm still working on, and all kinds of hopes and dreams and desires for the future. And where can we play together? How can we contribute to each other?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Just putting it all down and really, I saw something the other day in it. I think it might have been an Osho quote. Who great example of, hey, there's some warts here, there's some absolute genius, and deep wisdom, and this particular quote, or just to kind of paraphrase, he was basically saying, instead of seeking to be um, someone special or of significance, seek to be of service. And I think that's really where we're going to find that happiness that you were seeking early on, right? Or another thing that I just saw that was like an experiment where a teacher had every kid in the school, or a whole school did it. I think they wrote their names on a balloon, and then all the balloons go in the hallway, and you have 5 minutes to find your balloon with your, and no one found their balloons. And then they did a second experiment. Okay, everyone, when you find someone else's balloon, get them their balloon. And within minutes, everyone was holding their balloon, right? Isn't that good? I mean, it's like, that is, this idea that, I'm going to show up high, like you said, warts, made some bad decisions, could be judged as bad decisions, made some what could be judged as good decisions. None of it really matters. Here I am. How can I help you to get what you want? And I know that my balloon's going to come to me as a byproduct of that. To me, is like, is the path. After my many years of trying so many different ways to get what I want, that's my conclusion.
I am with you. There's such a beauty in contributing to others, and it speaks to or acknowledges, we're all on this big blue marble together. This is our world. This is our home. It is not exclusive of any of us. And truly, what occurs for one of us occurs for all of us. And, to an energetic degree. And that's not, and the interesting part, see, what I'm interested in is we can have a conversation like this, and we can have the sense of it. We can have the sense of the truth of it. Because once again, what's true makes you lighter. A lie makes you heavier. So, and then for me, what it's about is going the extra step to actually live it, to make it practical and pragmatic. So we're actually living this way in our lives, because it's where I was so stuck before was desiring this, having a sense of these things being possible, reading quotes like this and reading people like this. And yet I wasn't able to live it. I was never given the tools for functioning like that in the world. And so part of my target is to do what I can to let people know it's possible, but also give them the actual tools to be able to live it, to be able to wake up and have that as more and more and more of their life. And, each of us has different desires, and I'm sure there are many common threads for a lot of us, but how do we have the greatness of our common threads of possibility, and simultaneously the greatness of our individual threads of desire and possibility, and have all of that contribute to each other?
Yeah. Right.
That's
Yeah.
that for me is one of my targets, and one of the things I like to invite people to know can actually be possible.
Mm. Yeah. I think that is the if we're going to make it to the utopian sort of the closest to a utopian society that exists, it starts with realizing like there's enough room for everyone to be fully expressed and in their genius and truth. And it's not a, this, we've been trained in this competitive me versus you. And, it's just not really the way things are ultimately structured. It's not the path to your greatest success, you
No.
know?
And if you look at nature, nature doesn't function that way.
Right.
For years they thought that the big tree was stealing nutrients from the other trees.
Mm,
And now, upon further research, they found that the big tree is actually contributing to the littler trees when they need food.
mm,
It's
mm.
like, and that's the way all of nature is. All of nature knows its place and is not diminished as a result. Everyone and everything is made greater.
Yeah.
And it's so there's truly this communion that's available that includes all of us.
Yeah.
And once again, our definition of consciousness and access consciousness is where everyone and everything exists and no one and nothing is judged. And
Mm.
so it then becomes, what contribution is this person, what contribution is
Mm-hmm.
this thing? Like we talked about having intense experiences like abuse, and you are correct. Like for me, one of the gifts of that is I can speak to anybody who's had something like that and
Yeah.
be able to have have an in-depth conversation and start to address some of the things and help them unlock them. And
Yeah.
so what if one of the other tools that we use is this question: what's right about this I'm not getting, and what's right about me I'm not getting? Because we
Mm.
tend to, once again, judge a
Mm.
situation based on our particular parameters or the parameters that we bought from others that we've grown up with. And that's another thing right there, is all the points of view that we bought from others, but that's a story for another time. um,
Yeah.
but because we're so able to pick up on the thoughts, feelings, and emotions and points of view of others. But as little kids, and well, still, we can pick up on their entire energetic structure of reality, which is why we tend to be some combination of our mom and dad moving through the world, unless we make some dynamically different choices. And so it's like we haven't been educated that it's possible to live with ease, to live with a sense of being contributed to by everybody and contributing to everyone else. And yet I think people are waking up to that. And like you said at the very beginning, or like you said just a few moments ago, to be of service, to be that place where we're actually being a contribution, that's one of the greatest gifts we have.
Yeah.
And one of the difficulties, one of the things that gets in the way of that for most of us, especially the people listening to this podcast or watching, as the case may be, is that we try to be the savior for people rather than empowering them with choice. Even if their choice, and because why? We don't want to have them make choices that hurt them, quote unquote. But how many choices have we made that seemed hurtful at the time that gave us the awareness we required to never do that again?
Yeah.
It's like we keep trying to, that idea of you can give a person a fish and they'll eat for the evening. You teach them to fish, they'll feed themselves for the rest of their lives. If we could get into allowance of the choices people make, because from my point of view, true caring is seeing somebody's capacity to choose and acknowledging that and empowering them to choose, even if it's not going to turn out the way we would want it to. They're going to get awareness from that that will contribute to the course of their future,
Right.
because they get awareness of what not to choose. So is there truly any wrong choice? And if we're not trying to heal and change everybody to make them happy, because we all on some level know the only way somebody's going to get happy is if they choose it. But we also want to believe that it's up to us. We can't
Mm-hmm.
we can't have it both ways. And it's not your fault if the people in your life won't choose to be happy, even if they try to make it your fault and blame you for what's going on.
Right. Right. Yeah. I think that's an important realization that we're not here. to fix anyone. We're here to be an example and to lend a hand when it's invited and wanted, and to otherwise the best thing I can do, Ram Dass, is work on. Best thing I can do for you is work on myself. The best thing you can do for me is work on yourself. And so it's really more in the example than the need to fix something, as if there were such a thing as broken. And based off of the greatest view, I agree. I don't think there is. I think it's all happening in divine order, in leading everyone to their next greatest and grandest version of themselves, whether there's a conscious awareness there of that or not. And so that's, to me, brings a great sense of peace around all the apparently, horrific things that happened in the world.
Yeah. And it's an interesting perspective if we look from that place of caring, not being fixing someone else.
Yeah.
But caring being, I am here for you energetically. I have your back, and I know you need to choose your path.
Yeah.
I can't choose it for you. Because the other interesting part about that is, I mean, what do we do if somebody says, don't do that? Well, we've got to do it. You just told me not to. Of course I'm going to do it,
Yeah, right.
Or if somebody says, do this because I want you to, you're like, I'm not going to do it. Yeah, but you said you wanted to. Yeah, but now that you want me to, I'm not going to do it,
Right.
So when we try to control others, we're having the opposite effect. Whereas if we're willing to allow them to choose, they start to see what the results of those choices are, oftentimes before they choose it, if we're not trying to get them to go in a particular direction.
Yeah. So someone who is someone you love, let's say someone you love is battling depression, or someone, just in your world, how do you sort of work with that person? How do you, ask, are you okay? How do you, what is your approach to, just being a support in a healthy way for someone?
There's actually several things for me personally because of the tools that I have available with Access, which is, so the first thing is to do exactly that. Hey, how you doing? Are you okay?
Yeah.
Seems like there's something going, it seems like I just noticed something. There seems like some disturbance in the force. Is everything okay? And the thing is, you gave it the qualification, somebody I love and somebody I care about, which for the people that are close to me, they know they can call me anytime.
Yeah.
And they know I've got a very large toolbox and a willingness to contribute. And so I have that with the people that are close to me. Whether everybody reaches out all the time or another, we all have our stuff. So, but in that, I will ask them and I'll start with a conversation. But then the other thing that I'll do is, and I have this, I employ about 270 people around the world at this point. And one of the things that I have with a huge number of those people is they have my number. If they're having something come up, they can call me. And what we do is I will start by asking them, hey, what's up? And they'll tell me the story. And what I do is, so there's two different things. If it's an ongoing long-term thing, then what I'll do is I will ask them to tell me about when it started. Actually, short term, I would do the same thing. But one of the things that I would do personally is the thing that literally saved my life 24 years ago, which is Access Consciousness bars. It's a light touch technique that's done on the head, takes about an hour and 15 minutes. And we've done studies and found that it decreases anxiety, stress, and depression an average of 87% with one friggin' session.
Wow.
And we've also seen a lot of people where it gets them over their PTSD, former special forces people who've experienced abuse. It dynamically changes the PTSD that they're going through. So if I can, that's another one of the tools that I would bring in because of what it changes on a level that's beyond the cognitive.
Is it like
And
an
so
EFT kind of thing? Just curious what.
it's, well, it's basically like literally somebody would put their hands on your head, just
Mm-hmm.
hold it in these different places.
Huh.
And we've identified these 32 different points that have different effects. And
Wow.
in fact, like one, like over the eyebrows is joy and sadness.
Hmm.
I don't remember which one is which because I forget all the time. But, it's like when somebody has a problem, an emotional problem, what do? They put their hand up here. Why?
Uh-huh.
Well, one of the things that it does is it actually activates those bars. And we call them bars because they look like energetic bars that go through the head
Mm-hmm.
for people who see that sort of thing. But what
Mm-hmm.
happens is the result of it is you go from not having a sense of choice or space and feeling really contracted to having a
Mm.
sense where, oh, it's all okay.
Yeah.
See, and from that place, then there's a different conversation that can be had. If I don't have that ability, see, all of what I have found in doing this work with hundreds of thousands of people around the world is the only thing that really ever sticks us is the lie.
Mm-hmm.
Once you can bring the light of awareness to that, which is consciousness, synonymous with total awareness, once you can bring consciousness or awareness to that, the stuckness goes away because the lie disappears.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if you bring light to a dark room, you can see what's in there and you don't stub your toe anymore and run into the furniture.
Yeah.
It's basically like that. So, what I would also do then is ask the person questions and have them walk me through. Let's say it's a recent episode of depression or unhappiness. I'd have them walk me through from where they were happy to the moment where they recognize that they went to depressed or unhappy.
Mm-hmm.
And I say, okay, what happened? Which is, I mean, it's so deceptively simple. It's like, because we're not naturally depressed, we're naturally happy creatures. It's just that we've lived in a world that has sort of skewed things for whatever reason. So what I'll do is I'll ask them what happened and I'll go, okay, so, and then I'll ask them some more questions. And we have this thing called a clearing statement that gets rid of the fixed points of view around something. But one of the questions I would always ask, and this is a tool I'd like to give everybody, is who does this belong to?
Mm.
Is it actually yours? Because
Mm.
one of the things that I found, and it's actually the first tool that I got after I had this bar session that literally saved my life 24 years ago, was the girl running my bar said, one of the things we found is that 98% of your thoughts, feelings, and emotions are things you're picking up from other people.
Mm.
Thoughts, feelings, emotions, judgments are all particular energies and vibrations. And we're really good at picking this stuff up. So if you ask, who does this belong to? When you're
Mm.
having stress about money, when you're having fear, when you're having doubt, when you're having
Yeah.
depression, if it lightens up at all, it's not actually yours.
Hmm.
You're aware of it from somewhere and just return it to sender with consciousness attached. So the other question I would ask is this actually yours? Because we're all way more aware. We're all like psychic radio receivers.
Yeah.
And we're picking up things all the time, but nobody has ever given us this information. So one of the
Mm-hmm.
things I love about access consciousness is it's like all the tools you should have been given when you were born that nobody ever gave you,
Yeah.
and and so she told me this. And what used to happen for me is I would wake up depressed and just feeling like just terrible. And I would literally start crying. And she gave me this tool, who does this belong to? Well, I woke up a couple days after getting this bar session, and here it was again, this sense of depression and doubt and inability to make things work. And she had written, who does this belong to, in this little yellow sticky note that when I emptied my pockets 2 days before, it happened to sit up by my clock. I didn't even notice it. And so I look over at the clock to see how much longer I have to wallow in self-pity before I need to go be a doctor and help people.
Yeah.
And I read these words, who does this belong to? And I went from depressed and crying to a smile on my face instantly.
Wow.
And I went, okay, what just happened? And I went, wow. And then I remembered, because I had totally ignored it, when she said, look, probably, because I talked to her about the depression, and she said, how much of that is what you're picking up from other people? And how much are you aware of it? But also, how much do you hold on to it because you're trying to find a solution for them? And she
Yeah.
said, how many patients do you have? And I went, I don't know, 100 something, couple, I don't know. She said, how many of those people are you connected to and trying to heal? And I went, all of them. Isn't that my job? And she went, well, you're doing a great job of your job, but what if you didn't have to do it that way? What if you didn't have to take it away? And I went, wow. And so after this, I was driving to work one day, and I just felt this rage take over my body. And I was like, ugh, like I wanted to kill people. I had no reason for it. And I went,
Wow.
wait, who does this belong to? And it went away. And I was
Wow.
like, wow, this is way bigger than I could have imagined. And I was really, it's one of those things where you get the information and you kind of go, okay, that sort of makes sense. Because when I hang around happy people, I get happier. When I hang around sad people, I get sadder. When I hang around people where I'm trying to heal them, I tend to feel like them. Okay, this sort of makes sense, but still, it's kind of like, shouldn't we have been told this?
Yeah.
Like when we were 3, 2, 1, 5,
Yeah.
6, and we
Right.
started school,
It should be a
but
very
we weren't.
foundational piece of knowledge, right? To navigate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
interesting because a lot of the pieces of awareness that all of the awareness, all of these things, I keep calling the tools of access, like this idea of asking a question and this
Hmm.
idea of who does this belong to? These are all things that we found by working with people and just
Yeah.
going on an explorational journey of what is this?
Yeah.
What do I do with it? And how do we change this?
Hmm.
And so we've gotten this information, but part of the difficulty is when something wasn't part of the foundation of our lives, we
Hmm.
tend to discount it until we get enough evidence that it might have some value.
Right. Right. Yeah. Wow. That's a very powerful tool to share. I mean, so simple, and I think most people don't realize how empathic. You hear this idea of oh, I'm an empath. I'm an empath. I think we're all empaths to varying
Yeah.
degrees. Some
Yeah.
people may have more open centers, and you look at things like human design or whatever, if you know anything about that, and it's like we're wired differently, and some people are really taking on other people's stuff, maybe others less, but to some degree, we're all influenced by um, the energy of those around us, right? And it's sticky. And so yeah, just um simple tools to help to because you hear that a lot too. How do I protect myself? How do I
Yeah.
I think of my son who's an actor, and he's doing a lot of heavy roles sometimes, and I'm like, okay, you need to really have some tools to
Yeah.
make sure that that's not you're tapping into things, right? And so I think it's are there any other sort of, you know, obviously people can check out, um, go much deeper with access consciousness and everything like that. But, is there any other kind of tools that come to mind that will help people to sort of navigate
Yeah.
the energies of reality?
Absolutely.
Cool.
So one is the idea of anytime you come to conclusion or
Mm-hmm.
judgment, stop.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't
Mm.
even, and here's the thing is we don't realize when we're concluding, it's like it's there before we even get
Mm-hmm.
present.
Right.
It's like we have a conclusion autopilot that we've developed. And so sometimes what'll happen is you come to a conclusion, and what you start to realize is every conclusion kind of does a contraction because you've got to solidify something,
Mm-hmm.
like this is this.
Mm-hmm.
And what we found is for every judgment, every decision, every conclusion that you make,
Uh-huh.
nothing that doesn't match that can come into your awareness.
Right.
So if you decide, money is a struggle right now, guess what? That's all you see. Why? Because you've decided it, not because that has to be the reality. And this is
Right.
such a, it's such a, such a mind twist or a mind untwist to get this. So one of the things that you can do is there's a couple things. One is you can just ask, okay, how many decisions, judgments, and conclusions do I have creating this? And how many of those are not mine? And then we have this thing called a clearing statement, which from my point of view is one of the biggest upgrades in personal development since there's been personal development. Short form for that is POC and POD, which stands for going back to the point of creation of wherever you made that a fixed point of view and made that a fixed part of your reality. And just go, so how many decisions, judgments, conclusions, and computations do I have creating this? And how many points of view have I bought? And and you just ask, okay, am I willing to let that go? And hopefully the answer is yes, and you don't have to know how to let it go. That's when you go, okay, POC and POD all of that stuff. And we actually have a website explaining it. It's called theclearingstatement.com. It's about a 20-minute explanation of this thing, and it's free. It's, just a video up there explaining it. But this is something I use every day when I notice I've got some contracted point of view. I go, okay, all the points of view I bought here and all the decisions, judgments, and conclusions and computations, POC and POD all that. Like, I'm willing to let this go, POC and POD it. And the cancel clear thing that, was all the rage a while ago, that being a way when you realize I'm doing something that's not what I'd like to be doing, I'd like to undo this. Well, this actually energetically does it. Okay. So you can change those fixed points of view. So that's the first thing, is the awareness of it and the acknowledgement of it and the recognition that it's our choice for that point of view that's making that our reality. And then you realize that, hopefully you POC and POD it, maybe take this to heart as a free
And
way.
POC and POD basically means I am releasing this conclusion, essentially, that I've come to.
Yeah. And it stands for going to the point of creation or the point of destruction, like where you created this as your reality. Because we don't, nowhere in the universe, like animals don't function from fixed points of view. They function from their awareness. They function from instinct. They function from knowing. Yeah. But we people who are thinking all the time believe that our conclusions and our judgments are going to show us the way to something different, but they don't. They can only show us what we've already concluded and judged.
Right.
So this is a way of going beyond that and creating some space where it doesn't seem to be any. And it's like, so the point of creation idea is like the room, the walls in the room look solid, right? But science tells us they're 99.9999999% space.
Right.
But they look solid because that's the way we've created them in our minds. Well, what if it's the same thing with every limitation that looks like a wall?
Yeah.
What if there's a space there where you could actually walk through it?
Right.
And it's amazing when just some of this stuff is so, as you start to get it and start to realize it might actually be possible, it's just like, like, hallelujah, I knew this should be possible,
Yeah. Right.
And so here's the tools for actualizing it. So then beyond that, we have going to a question, which is like, okay, so what else is possible here I've never considered? Like, what can I create? What can I choose? What can I be that will change this? What other choices do I have that I haven't acknowledged? And also, how does it get any better than this? Which is an invitation for something good to get better, which is great because then you don't stop something good. It's also an invitation for something quote unquote bad to get better. How does it get any better than this? And you start to realize that with this combination of acknowledging our conclusion and that our conclusion is our point of view that's creating the fixed reality that's showing up, being able to ask to go to the point of creation, because the consciousness that we are as beings, our soul or whatever you want to call it, whatever that connection is that we all know must exist, that thing is saying, hey, I want to contribute to you in living your best life. And there's lots of points of view that you bought that are getting in the way of that. We can change those now. And then you ask some questions, and a question takes something from this and opens it up into a possibility. Yeah. And we've been taught not to ask questions, because when you asked too many questions when you were a kid, what happened? Well, you were made wrong. Your parents didn't want to talk to you anymore. Shut up, kid. Or
Yeah.
the teacher was like, well, you're obviously not listening to me. You obviously haven't done the work if you're asking me all these questions. And so we're made wrong for that rather than encouraged for that. And one other point of view, or one other tool that can be really helpful, is when so everybody out there, if you'd be willing to get some upset that's in your world that you still, maybe it's occurred in the last, I don't know, a few days or week or something, and it's still there, and you still keep looping back into it. And what I'd like you to do is just get the energy of it and just say in your head, interesting point of view. I have this point of view. Cool. And now one more time. And usually what happens is you get present with it and you no longer avoid it. And you say and acknowledge, I'm going to have an interesting point of view about this rather than this charged point of view. So, interesting point of view, I have this point of view. And it usually will shift.
Mm-hmm.
And then to whatever's there now, go interesting point of view, I have this point of view. And it usually shifts again. And again, interesting point of view, I have this point of view. Interesting point of view, I have this point of view. Interesting point of view, I have this point of view. And for those of you listening, what happened? And you might find that if you actually did this, you might notice that that sort of yuck and stuck energy that was there that felt like it was occupying your life, at least some part of it is melted. And that's one of the gifts that we can give ourselves by getting out of our fixed point of view of something.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Such great prompts and tools that you just shared. Would you say that anytime you find yourself having come to a conclusion that is limiting or less than what is possible, that should be a cue to release, to open
Always.
up with questions? I found I'm scanning myself in my life, and I found a conclusion or story that I've been really sticking to. I identified it. Start asking what's the first question you would ask as soon as you
First thing I would do is go pock and pod everything that allows that to exist.
So you'd see where it created. You would see where it created, point of creation, and then point of destruction is meaning, what is that, the destruction piece? Is that where you're getting rid of it, or?
Well, so here's the thing about the pock and pod, and the beauty of it actually is that you don't need to know where and when you created it. You just need to know you're willing to make a different choice now. Yeah. And you're looking at this going, wow, no, thank you. I'm done with this. And like, I use this hundreds of times a day. In other words, like, you're talking to somebody or you get a phone call or something. And it's kind of like, I go, okay, everything that is, and you don't even need to know the point of view. And this is where the gift of that energetic awareness that we have is, because we have the energetic awareness, which is why this who does this belong to thing works so well, because we're aware of the energetics of somebody's world. And we keep thinking we need to define it and understand it to change it and let it go. But we don't have to. We can go, hey, here's a heavy energy. It's not light. It must not be true. Everything that is, destroy and uncreate, like let it go and pock and pod it. And so the pock is the point of creation of the thoughts, feelings, and emotions immediately preceding your decision to create this fixed point of view. The pod is if you took a place where you just had space and no point of view, and you instituted this fixed point of view. And the beauty of it, from my point of view, and the ease of it, is that it works whether that occurred last week or when you were a kid or 100 billion years ago. Who knows when you created the point of view? We're just asking the germinal point of it, the seed, to dissolve. And what happens is when you dissolve the seed, all the little tendrils that have gone through your life start to dissolve also.
Right. Interesting. It's incredibly simple. And I, of course, can feel how powerful and sense how powerful it is, because even someone as, a lot of people, I'm the host of Positive Head, and, you know, have mostly a very optimistic outlook, and I can, there's times where, my girlfriend, my partner who knows me best, is like, oh, and then Brennan, it's so, you have these stories where you'll bring about why something is limiting, or why you've experienced hardship, or why it's not working out, or whatever. I mean, so everyone's susceptible to this, right? And
Yes.
being able to have simple tools to, when you see it, to just rewire your way of, those neural networks. Oh, I caught it. I'm aware of it. It's in my awareness. Okay, let's take step 1, 2, 3 to release. And
Yeah.
yeah, what a
Exactly
awesome.
that. And and I'm glad you brought up the thing of, we all experience this.
Yeah.
Somebody is pretending to be perfect, they're lying to you. I'm sorry.
Right.
It's
Right.
like, we're all on this planet. We all grew up with all kinds of stuff,
Yep.
and but having said that, that's kind of cool, because what else is possible
Yeah.
that we can, it's like, it's amazing that even with all the stuff that we've all grown up with, the level of possibility that is currently available to us.
Yeah.
You know,
Right. Right.
let's go
Yeah.
there.
Every moment is another chance to turn it all around, for everything to
Yeah.
open up in a way that you've never imagined possible. I mean, take someone like Walt Disney, who went bankrupt. Yeah, I forget how many times, over 5 times. Did anyone believe in him? Okay, I'm going at it again. Only 5 bankruptcies. Who's with me? Like, nobody. Now it's like, it's Disney. Like, so it's a great example. That fall down 7 times, stand up 8. That, if it isn't over, if you haven't won, and you
Yeah.
have eternity in front of you and all around you. So, time is not the issue. So, moving into that perspective definitely serves me and is empowering for me to always tap back into. So, um, well, wow, we're getting down to it here, and I always love to um, hear some inspiring, maybe synchronistic story, a story of serendipity, positive paranormal story, and I've got to imagine you have something inspiring to share up your sleeve.
Oh, goodness. It's interesting because there are so many. I like, literally, I have heard so many amazing things from so many people.
Yeah, right. It makes it hard to even answer sometimes. If someone asks me, it's like, oh, where do I begin? It's like, your mind kind of goes blank of like, uh, you know, just
Yeah, it
nonstop.
truly does. I know this may not fit the bill, but
There's no
I
wrong, just whatever feels inspiring to share. That's really
cool.
it.
So I met a lady. It's about, I guess, about 12 years ago now, and I was in Stockholm, Sweden, and I got called to do a session. And this lady happened to have fourth stage liver cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, and I always ask, this is the other thing about asking the question. I always ask yes or no. And
Mm-hmm.
I got a yes. And I figured the universe had something in store, right? So I go there, and this lady looks like she's probably in her 60s. She's got, gray streaks all throughout her hair, and she's there, and she has this big stomach that looks like it's riddled with cancer. And I just, from the moment of seeing this woman, I was like, she is so beautiful. There's so much
Mm-hmm.
beauty here.
Mm.
And so, what I spoke with her about was the beauty that she knew was possible, and
Mm.
the beauty that she had known as a kid.
Mm.
And what I talked to her about, I got her to look through the eyes of the people that didn't see it, and to recognize that they had their own story, but that didn't mean that she couldn't be it.
Yeah.
And I used some of the other access consciousness tools, and it was interesting because at one point I put my hand right over the liver where all this stuff was, and what was underneath it was such immense beauty. It brought me to tears.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, this is one of the most beautiful experiences of my life.
Wow.
And I never heard from her. And she was in fourth stage cancer. So I figured, she probably passed away. And I was there promoting one of the first books I wrote called Being You Changing the World about 18 months later. And I was in a room with 400 people. I'd never been in a room with that many people before. And we were at the break for the class or for the intro evening that I was doing for this. And there were a whole line of people wanting their book signed and et cetera. And this lady who looked like about 30 years old with the brightest green eyes I have ever seen, with this gorgeous dark brown hair, comes up to me and hands me flowers and a card. And just like snuck in and snuck out. And I was like, that was weird. And my
Mm-hmm.
personal assistant came up to me after the end of the hug line and she said, do you know who that was? I was like, no. She said, that's the lady with cancer you worked on 18 months ago. And I was
Wow.
like, holy cow.
Wow.
Whoa. And I have been so blessed. I'm so glad I stayed alive 24 years ago because I have been
Yeah.
so blessed to see so many people choose so many miraculous things.
Yeah.
And I guess I present that story as an awareness of us and what we are capable of,
Yeah.
because that's us. From my point of view, this is us. And whatever you seem to be struggling with right now or think you're not getting right, please know there is a way to change it. And it doesn't require following anyone or anything. You are that source. It's
Yeah.
just about getting in touch with that and knowing it.
Mm. I love that story. Wow. Yeah. That was a great share. And yeah, it's just like the power of tapping into the beauty behind the suffering. Like I mean, obviously look how transformative it was for her. And here you are, all these years later, and it's still like this point of emotion and power for you. So yeah, thank you for sharing.
Thank you. And there's a question I want to share that I developed partially as a result of this for anything going on in our lives. And it may sound a little cheesy for some people, but the question is, what is the beautiful energy underneath this?
Mm-hmm.
As
Yeah.
a way of changing our perspective, because when we can start to see from that perspective, we stop resisting, we stop avoiding, but we really start to get in line and in tune with what's actually true for us, which
Mm.
is that awareness of the beautiful world all around us.
Yeah. Beautiful question, beautiful shares. Thank you so much, my friend. What is the best way for people who would like to follow your work, check out Access Consciousness, etc., to do so?
Probably the best would be if you go to drdainhere.com
Mm-hmm. Okay.
and you
We'll put a
can
link.
follow. What's that?
I said we'll put a link
You're the
in the show
best,
notes.
Brandon.
Yeah. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
And there are a lot of free resources. My desire is to pay forward the gift that all of this work has been for me, and
Yeah.
also, once again, if you're somebody out there who knows more as possible, I just want you to know I know that for you too. Okay,
Yeah.
and that doesn't mean do my stuff. Find what's going to work for you, but please know there's so much more available. There truly is.
Yeah.
And I sound like a dreamer, but you may say I'm a dreamer, but I know I'm not the only one.
Definitely not.
But if you
Yeah.
go there, I've also got, I don't know, something like 800 videos on my YouTube channel.
Wow.
A lot of things on my Facebook channel. Oh, and there's one thing. If you go to drdainhere.com, if you go to the store, there's an audio that I made called Waking Up Miraculously.
Mm-hmm.
And it's my gift to everybody. It's, I wish I had a link. I did not prepare. I apologize. But if you go to
Okay.
drdainhere.com, select the store, and then go to You Got This.
Mm-hmm.
There's a bunch of audios on different subjects there, but one called Waking Up Miraculously is my gift to everybody.
Cool.
And please go and receive it.
Beautiful. Yes. Thank you for that. I'm sure many people will do that. And like I said, I'll put a link to the site in the show notes here. And Yeah, this has been incredible, my friend. Thank you for sharing. I do have one final question for you. Oh, before I ask my final question, I just thought of something I wanted to ask when you were sharing the cancer story. You said I always ask a question of yes or no, just about whether or not to do something, like to go to the spot where you met
Yeah.
her. Yeah, okay, that's what I thought you were
Yeah.
saying.
And I'll further that for people who would like to start to get a sense of knowing what to choose. After a while, yes or no works after you've had some practice, but you can ask, what will my life be like in 5 years if I choose this?
Mm,
And what will my life be like if I don't? And it's not look like, because we can't see the future, we can only
mm-hmm,
perceive it. And so the sense is, and we can ask this even for small choices. It's not just for
mm-hmm.
big choices, but you
Yeah.
put it in that perspective of 5 years, and then your mind can't figure it out. So you have to go with the direct awareness of the energy. And the
Ah,
sense
I
is,
like
does
that.
it expand or does it contract? And that's the only
Mm-hmm.
awareness you require.
Gotcha. I mean, it's just getting more sensitive, right? Well, I love that.
Yeah.
You can't calculate because I'm not asking about something tomorrow or 5 years from now. Okay, logic goes out the window. I can't figure that out. What feeling arises when I ask
Yeah.
that? And
That.
and that's brilliant, brilliant tools, my friend. I do have one final question to ask you, and it is my cliche closer, and it is this. In 60 seconds or less, what is the meaning of life, according to Dr. Dain here?
The meaning of life is to have fun and contribute everything you know is possible to everyone willing to receive it and to
Hmm.
receive their contribution in return.
I love that. Well, thank you so much again for taking the time to share your wisdom and insights and tools. And thank all of you for tuning in your beautiful brainwaves and incredible hearts to another episode. Until next time, journey well.